Hey guys, today we're talking about two movies from the 80s. One I think is rather bad, but it's perceived as a good movie, and the other I think it's perceived as a bad movie, but is actually pretty damned good. So the first movie we're going to talk about is Ghostbusters, which is the older one of these two. Is from 1984. It stars Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, and many others. I have to say that this movie is difficult for someone young. Maybe Bill Murray they will know. I'm not even sure if they will know him, but they will know Sigourney Weaver, I think. And other people I don't think they will know, because I think this movie was birthed from comedians from the 1980s, people that were on SNL and on other shows, people that were doing stand-up comedy, and people loved it back then. Of course, this movie is about a group of guys that have like these experiments going on, and they believe in the paranormal, and they believe in ghosts and demons and all of that, and they happen to encounter some really crazy demons and ghosts and such on the city, and they have to fight this big demon. And yeah, this is the movie that I think is a bad movie. I know many people revere Ghostbusters like as a big thing of the 1980s, and something that was attached to the zeitgeist, such a huge cultural impact. And I have to say that I think the biggest cultural impact was actually the music. I think the music in this movie is particularly outstanding. I think they did an amazing job, and of course this movie, I think it won. No, I didn't win, but it was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Song, and because the song was originally created for the movie. And you can see that because the title song, let's say, is just amazing, and everyone in the world knows that song. So they did a good job when you hear that. And the rest of the score is actually pretty well done, except for some parts that I don't really like, but it's minor. As for the acting, I don't understand the acting at all in this movie. I think pretty much everyone is on their own movie basically, and I think the only person that really attracts you and does something different, and especially because her career afterwards and before, you're like, okay, you're so different in this movie, is Sigourney Weaver. I mean, just imagine that 5 years prior she was doing Alien, and then some years later she did Aliens, like 2 years later I think. I mean, she's different in Alien than in Aliens, and in this movie she's some other person. I think Bill Murray, in this movie you can see his shtick, and I think he has had better movies with that shtick, to be honest. Later on in his career he had much more success, and people understood where he was coming from. In this movie it reads like desperate and annoying. It doesn't read like weird and quirky. It's really, I wasn't comfortable with him in the movie. And with Dan Aykroyd, I know he's a comedian. He's very comedic normally in movies and in TV shows, and in this movie he flatlines. I mean, he's not funny at all or interesting or the center of the movie. I mean, I think he was intended to be kind of the center of the movie because he was so popular back then, but he isn't. And as for the other scientist in the group, I mean, the third one, I'm very sorry, but I don't know his name. I mean, I could look up his name, but that would be false for me to pretend I know his name. I don't know who he is, and that's sad. And maybe that's something that is attached to the cultural thing of the United States, and maybe if you are from the United States, you know who he is. To be honest, he doesn't make much of an impact. He's just a serious scientist. He's a serious guy in the movie. Just to have a black guy, they have this actor that I know, but I don't know the name, just enter like in the second half of the movie. And that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any damn sense. And he's supposed to be like this normal guy who's with these people just because of the money, basically. It makes him seem greedy somehow. It doesn't read really good, and I think it doesn't speak well about black people in New York. I mean, black people in New York have always been a thing, have always been, like a staple of the city. Like, there's a big neighborhood called Harlem in New York, and that many New Yorkers happen to be black, and that their culture has impregnated New York culture. So you would like that to be mixed, and that happened way before the 80s. So it's kind of weird that in these movies he's just a greedy guy, and just a guy that you don't know anything about. So the screenplay is, to be honest, the screenplay is very bad, and I don't get it. I don't get how this movie is praised so much and people love it so much. And I just saw this movie because someone said the new movie Afterlife is apparently quite entertaining, so I was like, okay, maybe I should see the original Ghostbusters, because to my surprise I had never seen it. And now I'm decidedly not going to watch Afterlife because I'm not interested in this universe. It's not for me, it's not my thing. I think the special effects are fine for the times, of course, but that's it. I mean, of course today they don't stand a chance. I don't want to see that. I'm not interested. And again, the only good things about this movie are Sigourney Weaver and the score. So yeah, sorry, but this is not for me. And the second movie that we're going to talk about is Robocop. Robocop, I think it was released in 1987, and many people think of this movie and just imagine like ultra violence and just a robot killing people, and that's it. And of course that happens in the movie, but the movie has such an amazing commentary on capitalism, on the US society, on consumer, aspects of life, and I think it's such a fantastic film. Not only the art direction was beautifully done, but because it's futuristic, but like in Alien, it's futuristic but dirty, like Blade Runner, I think. In this movie you can see the sun, and it's kind of nice to have the sun there, but it's dirty. And Detroit, which is the city it's set in, is just a horrible place. I mean, it's rid with the crime, of course, but also with dirt, and it feels it has been left to its devices, if you will. And of course, you know that Robocop is a movie about a cop who is shot like 100 times, and he somehow survives with this technology that some people are developing in order to make a Robocop, a robotic cop that defends the city of Detroit and tries to basically liberate an area of the city that this company that made him wants to transform into a new town with towers and technology, and of course win some money for that. It's corporate greed also, and it's fun how they use, the people that they use to show how awful corporations are. And even at the end, when he saves one of the corporation guys, he's a awful guy too. It has kind of a love story, but not really. I mean, it's not really a love story because it doesn't really develop into anything. It's more like a companion story, if you will. I think that's a breakout thing in the 80s, because the 80s were all about lovey-dovey things and the couples and all of that, and sex, a lot of sex. And I don't remember if there was like an insinuation of sex here with hookers and there's drugs and there's alcohol, but it also reflects that that's what happened and still happens in corporate things and in cities in that time and in this time too. And it's quite amazing to see the movie and realize that we haven't changed that much, and that all of the things that happen in that movie kind of happen today or could happen at any moment. So it's really interesting to see that in such a violent movie, because you think of Robocop and you think of something like Rambo or Terminator. I mean, they both have comments on society, but it's mainly the violence that you remember. And of course, that's what you remember about Robocop. And it's so interesting to think that such a violent movie can be so educational in some form. It's kind of amazing. But of course the violence in this movie, the action scenes, I have to say they hold up beautifully. They are ridiculous. Let's just say they are camp as hell, but they work. I mean, when a guy just rams into a thing full of toxic waste and he transforms like in a zombie, it's hideous, but it works. It works fantastically. And when Robocop is shot fatally, you just laugh because it doesn't make any fucking sense. But then, because he's going to survive. I mean, even if you haven't seen the movie, he survives because the name of the movie. So many things happen that are so ridiculous, but then you realize, okay, this is just hyping up things that actually happen. If you eliminate that camp attitude, that humor, let's say, and they happen and they are awful, and maybe the people that are supposed to protect us are not really doing that great of a job. I think the performances here are quite good for the movie, for the science fiction, for everything. I mean, action has always been portrayed as, you know, the lesser genre, but this one, I think it really works. It's quite fantastic how amazing work. However, never see the sequels, because the sequels suck shit. I mean, they're really, really bad, so don't watch those. But the original Robocop, not the remake, it's fantastic. Peter Weller is amazing in it. I think the actress is called Nancy Allen. She's also great in it. All the corporate guys, white guys, of course. I mean, and in here you have Asian people, Latino people, black people. Yes, in the background, of course, because, you know, it's the 80s and they haven't done all of that, let's say. The choices they made to put them in supporting performances really makes sense. I mean, it really makes sense where they are, because they are in the corporate rooms, they are in the police department, they are in the streets, but it's nice to see where they put them. And I think the director was subtly saying like, oh, they're there. Maybe he couldn't cast a black man as Robocop or something. Maybe he had the idea, but he had to do it, you know, for the times. But he put the people there and was saying like, okay, this is society. Society is much more than just a bunch of white people. And I think it's fantastic what he did, to be honest. I think that movie is great, and I just wanted to do this retro review to make you watch these two movies, to be honest, and to appreciate them for yourselves. And maybe you're going to have a different opinion than I do, but I just wanted to compare these two because I think the 80s were such a fucking crazy time, but many great things happened then and many not so great things happened then. So, you know, just appreciate movies and cinema and old movies and revisit some things that we will remember from our childhood. I think that's always amazing and great and fun. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please comment down below whatever you want about these two movies. Of course, like this video, share it on your social media, and of course, subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. Goodbye.